Hello BookTube. In my April TBR video I uploaded Monday, I mentioned some uncertainty about continuing on with some of my personal reading projects. So this video is going to be focusing on my 12 TBR, a list of 12 books I hope to get to in 2023. That hasn't gone exactly as I would have liked. So the 12 TBR are composed of 12 books, 6 fantasy that I've had for more than 2 years, and 6 literary fiction novels that I've had for the most part, less than a year. Only one of the literary fiction novels have I had for more than a year. I think it's been about 2 years since I bought Darkman's, but the rest of them are less than a year in my collection. So I ended up doubling up on the books, reading 2 a month rather than 1 a month, so that I could free myself up later in the year for other reading projects. Namely, I do plan to read the Kindle shortlist again this year, and if I had too many other commitments, I wouldn't be able to do it. So I decided to double up on the 12. So of the 6 books I've already encountered, I finished one and liked, I finished one and didn't like, and 4 I've bailed on. So that's a 1/3 success rate so far. So that lack of success, those 4 bails, plus a packed April, made me question whether or not I really should continue with my 12 TBR. So I decided to try a chapter tag and see if that might change things after I read the first chapter or a chunk of the beginnings of these books. So I initially, in my April TBR, mentioned only focusing on the fantasy novels, but I decided to include the 3 remaining literary fiction as well. So since Monday through Wednesday, I read the first chapter, maybe a little bit more, maybe a little bit less, of the 6 remaining books in my 12 TBR. So how did I do? Well, I'm going to start with the fantasy. And while I talk about each book, I'm going to try to talk about why I added them in my collection, if I can remember, which in some cases I can't. So I started on Monday with Winter of Ice and Iron by Rachel Neumeier. So to read the back of the book, which I never do, but I really probably should. In a world subject to indifferent gods and imminent spirits, where many headed dragons ride midwinter storms across the land during the dark turn of the year, the ambitions of power-mad kings seldom present the greatest threat to peace and prosperity. Even so, they don't make comfortable neighbors. When Kehera, princess of the peaceful land of Haravir, finds her country threatened by the ambition of the mad king of Emmer to the north, she resolves to take any steps necessary to protect her people. But she never expected to find herself in a power struggle between enemies she hadn't even known existed. Abducted and powerless, she must find a way to forge new alliances or see her homeland fall. Innis, infamous Wolf Duke of Ayanete, has long wished to break from his king and establish an independent kingdom of his own. When Kehera unexpectedly falls into his hands, he immediately sees how he might use her to achieve his ambition at last. But he never expected to care for her, or eventually fall in love with her, probably. Even as triumph seems within his grasp, he finds himself torn between grim ambition and the hope of winning something more. As midwinter rushes down upon the world, Kahera and Inish must find a way to work together, or they may both lose everything to a common enemy that is more dangerous than either of them had ever suspected. Okay, so I picked this book up in 2017. I probably saw it hauled, or almost certainly I saw it hauled on SFF 180. SFF 180 is a booktube channel that focuses on science fiction and fantasy. Thomas Wagner, who hosts the channel, is a professional book reviewer focusing on science fiction and fantasy. And he weekly or periodically now does mail hauls, which include a number of forthcoming science fiction and fantasy releases. So if you are at all interested in science fiction and fantasy and are not subscribed to his channel, you really should be, because he'll have interesting books. If you, although my interest in science fiction and fantasy has markedly declined in the last few years, which is subject for many other videos, but not this. So I read the prologue and parts of the first chapter and kind of bits of the second. So the prologue is about Ennis' mother, who was married to his father, who is a grade A jerk. And it was manipulative. It was a manipulative prologue. And also rather it could have been a different prologue. The prologue really doesn't add anything, because the point of that prologue is to make us dislike the male lead's father. The problem is that in the first chapter, Ennis kills his dad and takes over, which is basically how the family does it. Which makes you wonder why exactly he's depicted it partially better than him, because it's like every generation should probably be worse. But I did not like this at all. The prologue really put me off. The writing, the names, and it didn't really work at all. So I'm not entirely sure why. I don't remember why I picked this up. It's been out for over 5 years now. So it's been a while since it's been in my collection. And I guess that was a period when I was just hoovering up science fiction and fantasy without really thinking about it. But yeah, I'm not going to be continuing with this. Next, on Tuesday, I did 2. I started with The Bone Shard Daughter by Andrea Stewart. In an empire ruled by bone shard magic, the former heir to the emperor will fight to reclaim her magic and her place on the throne in this stunning fantasy debut. The Sukai dynasty has ruled the Phoenix Empire for over a century, their mastery of bone shard magic powering the monstrous constructs that maintain law and order. But now the emperor's rule is faltering, and revolution is sweeping across the empire's many islands. Trapped in a palace of locked doors and secrets, Lin is the emperor's daughter, but not his heir. Her childhood memories have been erased by mysterious illness. The only way to reclaim her birthright and overthrow her despotic father is to master the art of the very bone shard magic that his subjects fear. But the secrets behind her father's power are dark and deep, and the magic he wields does not come without a cost. When the revolution reaches the gates of the palace itself, Lin must decide how far she is willing to go to reclaim her throne and save her people. Now, for one thing, so I read the first chapter and bits of the second and third, but it quickly lost me. The first chapter opens with Lin having a conversation with her father and trying to convince him to name her his heir. again, even though she's this weird disease that made her lose her childhood memories. And then we're introduced to her bratty foster brother, adopted brother, who's currently the heir. And then the second chapter deals with another major character who's does something, who's a bit of a part of the rebellion-ish, I guess. I mean, the opening was kind of evocative, but the whole premise is I didn't care for. I mean, the whole why exactly does the emperor only have one daughter when he likely would probably have far more children than just the one, given its inspirations? Why exactly is she so concerned about? I mean, I guess one of the issues I have with some contemporary, well, a lot of fantasy, because a lot of fantasy does this, is where, like, how things would actually work if these stories were in a world in which this kind of story would take place, versus sort of a story written by a 21st century person and a 21st century American, with our own cultural precepts and stuff like that. But it just, yeah, those, what I read of the first chapter and change, just, it didn't do anything for me. And I probably picked this up, I'm pretty sure I bought it for, like in 2020, like around my birthday in November, which I probably shouldn't be mentioning, but oh well. I had a yin for more fantasy, so I picked this up. The next book I'll be talking about, another one that has been languishing on my shelves forever, and another one. So November, even as I sort of had my interest in science fiction and fantasy declined in 2020, there was a brief spurt in November of 2020 that I did pick up quite a few, although I really haven't gotten to any of them yet. So anyway, but I won't be continuing with this one either. Next up is Legacy of Ash by Matthew Ward. Let's see here. Okay. So, a shadow has fallen over the Trestian Republic, but as Trestia falls, heroes rise. Victor Ekardra is the Republic's champion. A warrior without equal, he also hides a secret that would see him burned as a heretic. Justiri Trellin is Victor's sworn enemy, a political prisoner he dreams of reigniting his mother's failed rebellion, and Colleen Trellin, Justiri's sisters, seeks not only to break free of their tarnished legacy, to escape the expectations and prejudice that haunt the family name. As war spreads across the Republic, they must set aside their differences in order to save their homeland, even though the later two are not willing parts of the former. However, decades of bad blood are not easily forgotten, and victory will demand a darker price than any of them could have imagined. Okay, so I read the prologue, which is about Josseri and Colleen's mother's death, and then the first chapter, which sees Josseri, who's a puppet duke, being sort of dealing with petty colonial dickishness. And I didn't like it. The book immediately sort of got on my bad side, and I really didn't care for it. I wanted to, and why exactly I ever picked this up, I don't know, because I did dip into the first chapter and with the I guess, colonial functionary being a jerk, a petty jerk, rubbed me the wrong way when I first looked at it. So I don't know what perversity led me to pick this up knowing it. Anyway, so yeah, I don't know. So now on to the works of literary fiction. So first up is Build Your House Around My Body by Violet Kuppersmith. This was longlisted for the Women's Prize last year, and here's the back of it. Two young Vietnamese women go missing decades apart. Both are fearless, both are lost, and both will have their revenge. 1986. The teenage daughter of a wealthy Vietnamese family gets lost in an abandoned rubber plantation while fleeing her angry father, and is forever changed by the experience. 2011, 25 years later, a young, unhappy Vietnamese American disappears from her new home in Saigon without a trace. The fates of both women are inescapably linked, bound together by past generations, by ghosts and ancestors, by the history of possessed bodies and possessed lands. So the first chapter is about the Vietnamese American woman arriving in Saigon. And it's okay, I guess. It's not necessarily bad. It wasn't necessarily immediately off-putting, but it also wasn't all that enticing either. The second chapter is the day she disappears, and it's from her boyfriend's point of view, and this takes place about a year later from the first chapter. And and that chapter is off-putting. The boyfriend, it's like, just, I don't know what's going on there. And then the third chapter is back in time. So I don't know if I would want to continue with this or not. I mean, there wasn't anything immediate that put me off, but at the same time, there are plenty of warning signs. So I don't know. I'm a lot more certain about Shame by Salmaan Rushdie. Okay, so set in a country not quite Pakistan, although it is very Pakistan, because anyway. The story centers around the families of two men. One a celebrated warrior, the other a debauched playboy engaged in a protracted duel that is played out in the political landscape of their country. Shame is a tour de force and a fitting predecessor to the author's legendary novel, The Satanic Verses. So this is basically about the early years of Pakistan, with the main character called Omar Khayyam Shakili. I think that's Shakil, who gets involved between the first, or one of the, I'm not entirely certain of Pakistan history. I know one of the two men is inspired by Benazir Bhutto's father, and the other is the long-running dictator who ruled Pakistan after a coup that overthrew Benazir Bhutto's father. So this is magical realism. It's weird. I read the part of the first chapter. I really did not like this at all. It just, the writing, the style, the way it was told, it was immediately off-putting. So I am definitely not continuing on with Shame. And so I picked this up because it was published in my birth year, and last year Criminali created the birth year book tag, which I thought would be cool to pick a few books that I hadn't read that were published in my birth year and read them. It wasn't successful. To put it mildly, none of the 4 books I picked worked at all. Anyway, so finally I come to Tomb of Sand by Geetanjali Shree, translated by Daisy Rockwell. This book won the last year's International Booker Prize. So, in northern India, an 80-year-old woman slips into a deep depression at the death of her husband, then resurfaces to gain a new lease on life. Her determination to fly in the face of convention, including striking up a friendship with a Hijra person, confuses her bohemian daughter, who is used to thinking of herself as the more modern of the two. Rather than respond to tragedy with seriousness, Geetanjali Shree's playful tone and exuberant wordplay results in a book that is engaging, funny, and utterly original, at the same time as being an urgent and timely protest against the destructive impact of borders and boundaries, whether between religions, countries, or genders. So I read the first 2 chapters. They were both quite short, and I really enjoyed what I read. So I'm definitely looking forward to coming back to Tomb of Sand in May, because I'm pretty certain I'll get to this in May. I'll make the time for it then. Although I could maybe push it back to August for Women in Translation Month, but I think I'll try to get to it sooner than that. So of the 6, Tomb of Sand is the one that I really liked the most. There was those first 2 chapters were delightful and really got me wanting to read more. So I will be coming back to Tomb of Sand when I have some free reading time, hopefully in May. So anyway, BookTube, that was my, I guess, deciding to discontinue one of my reading projects by doing a try-chapter tag TBR thing. Anyway, so that's all I got for today. Sorry if this video is a bit depressing, and I'll try to remember to add a link to SSF 180 in the show notes. But anyway, BookTube, that's all I got for today. I'll be back tomorrow with my March book haul, which is going to be rather large, which is probably why I don't actually read the back of the book or the summary of the book when I do them, is because I have a tendency for large book hauls, and it would take forever, particularly if there are Friday live streams I want to watch, which there are. So anyway, so I will do a book haul tomorrow when I normally do my filming, and then of course there will be weekly reads tomorrow evening, which is, yeah, probably going to be a bit of a downer too, because I did not have much success with my Sunday reading, and of course I spent most of this week with the try chapter tag, so pretty much it's going to be a bail, a rather disappointing poetry reread, and some manga. So anyway, BookTube, until I see you tomorrow, thank you, have a great afternoon, and stay safe.